So I started something yesterday with this tweet. Rockets Twitter, Reddit. What's up? I didn't realize this was going to be so controversial. I still can't understand and can't fathom how people defend the James Harden trade the way that it went down, between the Nets and the Rockets specifically. I don't understand how you can defend it. I think it's one of the worst trades of the NBA the last 15 years, and I'm here to defend that take, okay? You guys have other opinions, leave them down in the comment section below, but that's just where I'm at. Quickly before we get started, typical stuff. If you enjoy the content, consider subscribing. I upload every single day in this channel, most consistent NBA content on YouTube. Leave a like rating on the video as well if you're enjoying it. Imagine some of you are going to leave some dislikes, but that's fine. That's up to you. That's your choice. And then social link down in the description below as well if you want to hang with me outside of these videos, including on Twitter, where this tweet came from. So I put this out there, right? And a lot of people came at me and a lot of people had some differing opinions. We're going to go through those differing opinions right here, okay? The first one has to do with Kelly Olynyk and Caris Levert. I had no idea how much I was going to be talking about Kelly Olynyk yesterday, okay? So just to be very, very clear, here were the options when the Rockets decided to trade James Harden. The day that they moved him, here were the three options in front of them, okay? They could have traded him to Philadelphia, gotten Ben Simmons and some stuff. What the extra stuff was, we don't exactly know, right? But it was Ben Simmons and stuff, right? They could have gotten Caris Levert and all the picks that the Nets ended up giving them, or they could have gotten Victor Oladipo and all the picks as they send Victor Oladipo, or as they get Victor Oladipo from Indiana and send Levert to Indiana. I'm just arguing they chose the worst option out of those three, okay? Because what they ended up with was Kelly Olynyk on an expiring contract and then all these future Nets picks. We'll get to the pick stuff in a second, but there were people actually making the case yesterday that they would rather have Kelly Olynyk on an expiring contract than Caris Levert. You can be the most pessimistic Caris Levert person out there. You can say that he's 26, almost 27, that he has injury issues, that he's on a long-term contract. He's a better asset than Kelly Olynyk in every single situation, apart from him tearing his ACL for 3 consecutive seasons, okay? He is a real, legitimate asset. If you watch him play, there are Pacers fans that are definitely excited about him. He can score, he can facilitate. He's not going to be one of the most efficient guys in the league, okay? There's going to be some inefficiency there, but he is a real asset. Kelly Olynyk is nothing. The only way that he provides value to you beyond this season, okay, is if you re-sign him to a contract that you should not re-sign him to. In every single situation, you would rather have Caris Levert than you would Kelly Olynyk in a one-to-one swap, okay? One of the arguments against that point, and in addition to not bringing in Jared Allen as well, where people were saying, well, they were going to have to pay these guys long-term, or Caris Levert's already on a $16, $17, $18 million contract for the next couple of seasons. I would argue that a guy that is a productive player that's 26, 27, being on a multi-year deal is a positive thing in this scenario because Caris Levert, in my opinion, is actually a good player. But they were saying, no, the contract's too big. What were you expecting to pay Victor Oladipo, assuming that you were going to re-sign him and not have him leave for absolutely nothing? Was the plan when you acquired Victor Oladipo for him to leave for nothing? Because if it wasn't, then you would need to account for his salary in the long term, and assuming that he plays well with you, he was going to be in line for a 20 to 25, potentially plus $1 million a year deal, potentially a max deal, assuming Victor Oladipo played well for you. So I don't really understand the argument of, well, he's on a long-term deal, so it wouldn't have been worth it to have Caris Levert, okay? Victor Oladipo, to provide value to the long term, would have had to have signed a long-term deal as well. And by the way, Caris Levert might not be playing fantastic in every game for Indiana. He didn't play for like 2 months when he first got there because of a medical issue. It might take him some time to kind of ramp back up, okay? I think he's a good player. People have differing opinions. That's fine, but there's no scenario in which you'd rather have Kelly Olynyk than Caris Levert, and that's what they ended up with, okay? The second point, the draft picks. Okay. It's a little bit tough to project the future value of these picks, right? Because we don't really have that many scenarios in which a team has had this volume of picks, or the volume of picks that the Pelicans or the Thunder have over the next couple of seasons. We've never really had a situation like this, and one of the few situations that we have had similarly to this was when Boston had all the Nets picks and they got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, okay? Here's my question. I'm admitting that it's difficult to project the value of those picks into the future, so saying this is one of the worst trades of the last 15 years might be a difficult statement to really understand and comprehend, right? When you don't know the future value of those picks. Here's my question. What do these picks have to become to be worth James Harden straight up? Because that's what the trade was. It was these future picks. It was control over the Nets draft assets until 2027 or 28, or whatever the case may be, in exchange for James Harden. Okay. That was the trade because Kelly Olynyk doesn't provide any value. Okay. How many of these picks need to be in the top 10? What players do you need to get out of these picks to be worth James Harden? Okay. Because in my opinion, like let's just say, right, I doubt that then having control of the Nets picks in 21 and 22 is really all that impactful. 23 is a swap. I'm going to go ahead and say that it's doubtful that at the time of the 2023 NBA draft, the Rockets have a better record, or the Rockets have a better record than the Nets, and so then that swap comes into play. I'm going to go ahead and say that's difficult to imagine. So 2024, all the Nets guys are gone, let's say, right? And the Nets just don't do anything. Despite the fact that they have no incentive to be bad because they don't have control over their own picks, the Nets just decide to just be really bad for 3 years. How high did those picks need to be worth James Harden in 2021 straight up? 2 top 10 picks, 3 top 10 picks, 2 top 5, a couple of first overall picks. Like if you were offering the picks and you could say, I know that these picks are going to be the 5th pick in the draft, the 8th pick in the draft, how would that Harden trade look if you were just giving up picks? Could the Nets be like, hey, we know our pick is going to be the 8th pick in the draft in 2025 and it's going to be the 5th pick in the draft in 2026. Can we have James Harden? You're telling me you would have said yes to that. I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's only in a circumstance in which you're guaranteeing that, and you can't guarantee that. So this idea that it's difficult to project the value of these picks doesn't really make any sense to me because in all likelihood, the first half of them are not going to be all that valuable, and the possibility exists that all of them are in the 20s or outside the lottery. And even if one of them is a top 10 pick, trading a top 10 pick in 2027 in exchange for James Harden is awful value. You have nothing else to prop the trade up. It is literally just the picks. And that is why it's one of the worst trades of the last 15 years because, as these people pointed out, you don't know the value of these future picks. You need actual assets. You're not trading away Drew Holiday here. You're trading away a guy in James Harden that has been a top 5 MVP candidate for 5 years in a row. Okay, this guy that's won the MVP, he's one of the best players in the entire league. You can't trade a top 10 pick in 2025 and a top 15 pick in 2027 for James Harden. You just can't. So I understand that it's difficult to project the value of these picks, but I think mentally some people were thinking that these are going to be the 3rd pick in the draft and the 2nd pick in the draft in back-to-back years, and they're going to be well set up for the future. I doubt that's the case, and even if it is, having a couple of top 10 picks is not commensurate value in exchange for James Harden. It's just not, okay? The last point, people were saying, well, we didn't know Victor Oladipo was going to be this bad, so, that trade was kind of tough. And, thankfully we got away from the Oladipo thing. We traded him to Miami and got Kelly Olynyk. Exactly. You should have kept Caris Levert. That's part of the whole argument that I'm making here is the Oladipo thing didn't make any sense at the time. The only way the Oladipo thing worked out was if he played awesome and was suddenly worth a max contract and makes up for like 60 to 70% of the value of Harden, and then you get the picks as well, okay? That's the only scenario in which that works out is Victor Oladipo out of nowhere becomes an all-NBA caliber guy again. You give him a huge max contract, okay? And then you get the picks as well. But then nothing really matches up timeline-wise, and it's a complete mess. It's a disaster, okay? Last point to make here. Rockets fans, I think we're all on the same page, right? Everybody loves Kevin Porter Jr. It's a cool story. He's had some issues in the league, and hopefully he gets those things figured out. It's really cool that he's scoring well, that he scored 50 points in a game. Clearly a talented player. Everybody knew that when he was in college, right? Like that's why people were excited about him in Cleveland. There's a reason he got moved for protected 2nd round pick, whatever the case may be. Okay, we're talking about Kevin Porter Jr. in this moment. Okay. If we're calling Kevin Porter Jr. a franchise player, then I need to make a 3-part series about what a franchise player is in the NBA. Kevin Porter Jr. is talented. Kevin Porter Jr. is good. One 50-point performance does not make you a franchise player. Okay? He's had some great moments, and I'm legitimately happy for him, and I'm rooting for him, okay? But to suddenly, throw Kevin Porter Jr. into this Harden trade like he's suddenly a part of it is odd to me, okay? And then to start talking about this guy like he's a franchise player actually blows my mind. So here's where I'm at overall, okay? If you want to play this video 7 years from now, assuming that this channel is still a thing and YouTube is still a thing 7 years from now, okay? And you want to say, hey, look at all these wonderful picks that we have, Tucker. Look at these great young players. Kevin Porter Jr. has averaged 30 a game for the last 5 years. You were wrong. I will take that L. I will, okay? But where I'm at right now is that trading a handful of future picks in exchange for James Harden in 2021 is not enough value, okay? Even if somehow it works out in the moment, it's not a good trade, okay? In order for it to work out, these picks would have to become incredibly valuable. There's little indication that'll actually be the case, okay? And 2024 is the earliest at which any of these picks will have any real significant value, it appears. Yes, maybe Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving all suffer significant injuries over the next couple years. They don't have the championship push they thought they were going to have. They all start leaving. Right, I get that. But the Nets have no incentive to be bad because they know they owe their picks. They're going to do everything they can between now and 2025 or 26 to try and be a good contending team. They know they're not going to have a chance at this again for a very long time, okay? So I struggle to understand the mindset that suddenly everything's going to fall apart in Brooklyn unless you're the Rockets and you're projecting for Harden and Kyrie and Durant to suffer significant injuries. And I think that's a dangerous thing to try and project when you're trading away a player as valuable as James Harden. That's just where I'm at. You're entitled to your own opinion. That's completely fine. But I felt like I needed to share mine because for certain parts of yesterday, it felt like I was a crazy person. It felt like everybody was trying to tell me that this Harden trade was great and that Kelly Olynyk is a better asset than Caris Levert. I thought I was living in the twilight zone for like a solid half hour yesterday. So leave your opinions in the comments. I'll read through them. We'll talk about it. That's the end of the video. Like the video. Subscribe if you're new. Socials link in the description. Have a good day, fellas. Peace.